All right, let's dive into an absolutely incredible story. We're talking about a man who, in a life that lasted just 24 years, managed to become a freedom fighter, a prophet, and literally a god to his people. This is the legend of Birsa Munda.
I mean, just let that sink in for a second. A young man who wasn't even 25, who struck so much fear into the heart of the British Empire that his name alone was more powerful than an army. How did he do that? What could one person possibly do to command that kind of fear and, at the same time, that kind of reverence?
So that's the big question we're tackling today, isn't it? How does a mortal man, born into poverty and dying in a prison cell, get elevated to the status of Bhagwan, God, and Dharti Aaba, the father of the earth? To get to the bottom of it, we've got to go right back to the beginning.
So Birsa Munda was born back on November 15, 1875. And he isn't just some figure from a history book. To this day, he is revered as Bhagwan. It's such a big deal that his birthday is now celebrated all across India as Janjatiya Gaurav Divas, which is a national day of tribal pride to honor all tribal freedom fighters.
But, to really get why he became such a revolutionary, we have to understand the world he was born into. Because in the late 19th century, the Chota Nagpur region, which was home to the Munda tribe, was at a complete breaking point. Their whole way of life, everything they knew, was being systematically torn apart.
At the very heart of Munda society was something called the Kunkati system. Now, this wasn't about private property or fences or deeds. It was a really beautiful system where the land, the forests, the fields, was owned by the entire clan. Together, it kept everyone in balance and preserved their deep spiritual connection to the earth itself.
And this slide, wow, it just perfectly captures the collision of two completely opposite worlds. On one side, you have the Munda system, all about community and harmony, and on the other, the British come in and impose their zamindari system, which was all about one thing: private ownership. It replaced sufficiency with exploitation and, pretty much overnight, turned the Munda people from proud landowners into forced laborers on the very land their ancestors had lived on for generations.
And the people enforcing this brutal change? Well, they had a name for them: Dikus. This was the Munda word for the outsiders, the moneylenders, the landlords, the contractors, who, with the full protection of British law, just flooded the region and bled the tribal communities dry.
So you've got this pressure cooker of a situation, right? And out of that crisis, a leader starts to emerge. Birsa's own life story, from a kid in a small village to a revolutionary leader, really mirrors his people's fight for their very survival.
He was born in a simple bamboo hut, but he was incredibly sharp. He even got an education at a missionary school and converted to Christianity, taking the name Birsa David. But that's where things took a turn. He saw firsthand how the missionaries looked down on and belittled his own tribal culture, and that just lit a fire in him. He completely rejected his conversion, went back to his traditional Munda faith, and decided to dedicate his life to fighting for his people's dignity.
And all of this leads to the absolute climax of his story, the Ulgulan. That word literally means the great tumult. And this wasn't just a protest or a small uprising. No, this was an all-out rebellion to take back their sovereignty.
So how do you unite people against such a powerful force? Well, Birsa did something brilliant. He became a prophet. He created a new faith called Birsite. He cleverly blended Munda traditions with bits of Hinduism and Christianity, calling for everyone to worship one god, Singbonga. It was genius, really, because he used familiar beliefs and mixed them with a strong organizational structure he'd seen in the missions. It gave his people a powerful shared identity to rally around.
And this became their rallying cry, the war cry of the Ulgulan. Abua Raj ete jana, Maharani Raj dundu jana. It's a clear, powerful message. Let the kingdom of the queen be ended and our kingdom be established. I mean, it doesn't get much more direct than that. It was a declaration of independence.
Okay, just look at this timeline. It's just mind-blowing how fast everything happened. He declares his mission in 1894, and a year later, boom, he's arrested. After he gets out, he launches the Ulgulan in 1899, using guerrilla warfare to hit symbols of colonial power. But just a few months later, in February 1900, he's captured.
And then, just 4 months after his capture, on June 9, 1900, Birsa Munda dies in Ranchi jail. The official story was cholera, but as you can imagine, a lot of people think the circumstances were pretty suspicious. The man who made an entire empire tremble was gone. He was only 24 years old.
But here's the thing.
If the British thought his death was the end of the story, they couldn't have been more wrong. In fact, it was the beginning of his legend. His struggle created an echo, a ripple through time that we can still hear loud and clear today.
The Ulgulan shook the British administration to its very core. I mean, they were so rattled, they were actually forced to do something about it. In 1908, they passed the Chota Nagpur Tenancy Act, which made it illegal to transfer tribal land to non-tribals. That was a huge victory. They also abolished forced labor. And Birsa himself became this massive national hero, a symbol of resistance whose portrait now hangs in India's parliament.
And that brings us to today. Modern scholars, activists, they look back at his struggle and see the blueprint for so many modern movements. His fight for Jal, Jungle, Jameen, water, forest and land was a powerful cry for self-reliance, for dignity, and for environmental sovereignty that is, honestly, more relevant now than ever before.
So, when you boil it all down, what's the real takeaway from this incredible life? Let's try to distill his massive legacy into 5 key, undeniable truths.
First up, he was a prophet of unity. He brought together different tribes that were often divided. Second, he was a defender of rights. His fight wasn't just symbolic. It resulted in real, tangible laws protecting tribal land. Third, he became a powerful symbol of resistance against colonialism and for indigenous pride. Fourth, he was a cultural revivalist, fighting to save the very soul of his people from being erased. And finally, number 5, he is an enduring inspiration, whose spirit is still alive in movements for social and environmental justice today.
And that really leaves us with a huge question to think about, doesn't it? In our world, with climate change, with constant debates over resources, what does Birsa Munda's fight for water, forest, and land mean for all of us right here, right now?